Welcome back, everybody, to the Upper Tier Podcast. The podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Audio versions of the show are available through Spotify, Podbean, Apple iTunes, wherever you pick up audio version show, you will find us there. This is your transfer window review show, the final show, thank God, on transfers. It's been an absolute trawl the last 3 months. But an absolutely brilliant transfer window. Some amazing players after coming into the Premier League, and of course some exited as well. We're going to go down through each of the clubs, and we're going to talk briefly about the ins and outs, and then we're going to give an overall rating on how we felt that window went for each of those clubs, the main clubs. Hope your Friday's all going really, really well. I hope you can't wait for the weekend. I know it's a trial when you're talking about international football. It's always when you're getting into the Premier League and starting to really enjoy it that it gets taken away from you, and you end up dealing with this international stuff for 10, 12 days or whatever it is. But I suppose there's only one place to begin, and that is with Arsenal. Some interesting ins there. Ben White, 50 million from Brighton. Nuno Tavares, Benfica, 7.2 million. Lokonga came in from Anderlecht, 15.75 million. Odegaard from Real Madrid, 30 million. Ramsdale from Sheffield United, 24 million. And of course, Tomiyasu, undisclosed from Bologna right at the death of the transfer window. Certainly interesting signings that came in. I would say probably overpaid on a number of them. But what I would really say is, are these really the signings that are going to take Arsenal from where they finished, I think, 8th last season, back into the top 6 or potentially pushing for the top 4? And I'm not really convinced of that at the moment. I'm not sure whether they brought in the players in the positions that they needed. I think they've spent an awful lot of money. I think it's the highest amount of money they spent in the transfer window across all the teams. And I'm just not too sure with what they brought in and what they let out, whether it's improved them greatly or not. They've had a tough start to the season. Arteta under a lot of pressure, although I don't think he has fielded his strongest 11 yet. But rooted to the bottom of the table, haven't scored a goal, conceded 9. Tough task ahead, going to be a tough season for Arsenal fans, no doubt about it. On the outs, Joe Willock to Newcastle for 20 million. I think that was a bad move for Arsenal. I think they should have hung on to Willock. I think he's an exceptional player. I think he's exactly what they would need in there. Lucas Torreira went out to Fiorentina on a season-long loan. David Luiz got released. Obviously, we know about Willian, who gave up his contract, basically 20.5 million, headed off to Corinthians on a free. A nice move from him for some people who would regard him as an absolute mercenary. Clearly not the case. Gundosi went out to Marseille, season-long loan. Saliba went to Marseille, season-long loan. Surprised at the Saliba one as well, especially with the issues that they're having at the club at the moment. And it was rounded out then with Reece Nelson to Feyenoord on a season-long loan. So when I look at who went out, and I look at who came in, you have to ask yourself, have Arsenal greatly improved? Ben White at 50 million from Brighton. I mean, when you think about United getting Varane for 30 odd million or something like that, and Arsenal are paying 50 million for Ben White, there's something seriously wrong in the market there in terms of how they're valuing these English players and this English tax that they talk about. But however, I looked at Arsenal and I gave them a 6 out of 10. In fairness to them, they went out and they have done business, but whether it's the right business or not, that remains to be seen. But certainly they've struggled at the start of the season, so I thought 6 out of 10 would be a decent mark for them. Let's move on to Aston Villa, a club who have made some real key signings. I think they've done really good business here. They could have easily got into a heated situation there with Jack Grealish gone, but obviously the opportunity for him to go to Man City and the money that they were going to receive from, they couldn't refuse it really. But they've hired some fantastic players. They've brought in Emilia Buendia from Norwich, 33 million. Ashley Young into Milan on a free. Leon Bailey is a key one that I'm going to be interested to see from Bayer Leverkusen. He's come in, but he's come in and he was injured, so he hasn't really started yet, but he's going to be a big player for them. Danny Ings, of course, came in from Southampton. Can't believe Southampton just let him go that easy, undisclosed. Axel Tuanzebe came in from Manchester United on a season-long loan. They've also brought in Chukwuemeka from Gillingham, undisclosed. So they've brought in some key players in some key areas. Now, this is very different to Arsenal. If you look at Aston Villa, they recognised that Grealish was gone, so they brought in Leon Bailey. They brought Danny Ings there to give them more goals up front, and it's already started. And then you look at Buendia, who was an absolute star in the Championship last year for Norwich. He's going to have a huge season this season for Villa. And I think they're a bang on for a top six. I know they stuttered a little bit at the start of the season, but I really do think they have a real good chance at top six. I think Dean Smith has a bit of work to do on the training ground, but once they find their feet, they're firing on all cylinders. And we know what the influence of a packed Villa Park can do on those away days for some teams to have to visit there. In terms of outs, of course, it's Jack Grealish went to Man City, 100 million, the biggest transfer, I think, in the window. Wesley went off to Club Brugge on a season-long loan, and El Mohammadi released, and Tom Heaton, of course, went to Man United on a free. So, okay, they've lost Jack Grealish, who was a huge player for them. But, you know, he had ran his course there at Aston Villa, and I think even the fan base knew that. But they must be very excited. Buendia, Leon Bailey, Danny Ings coming in, you know, they've really strengthened in terms of numbers there. So I've given Villa an 8 out of 10. I think they've had a real good transfer window. I think they've put in place a lot of really good players in key positions that they needed to address, especially with Grealish gone. So fair play to Aston Villa. I'm sure the fans are happy. Let's move on to one of the belters of the transfer window without a shadow of a doubt. The heavy hitters, Chelsea. Romelu Lukaku in 97.5 million. Bettinelli in from Fulham on a free. Of course, Sal Niguez coming in on a season-long loan. An absolutely amazing deal. Basically got him in from Buttons, and they obviously have an opportunity with a buy clause there as well to get him for little or nothing. Chelsea really shown their strength in the transfer window. Have put in all the positions now, and they have all the cover in the world now to put a proper run at this Premier League title race this year and retain their Champions League. Serious heavy hitters at the moment have started off decent in the season. Also, their outs, I mean, they've done some fantastic business. The amount of players, I couldn't even list off the amount of players they've gotten off the books, but they've done some great ones there. Obviously, Tammy Abraham to Roma, 34 million. Kurt Zuma went out to West Ham, 29.8 million. You know, Batshuayi went out to Besiktas on a season-long loan. Zappa Costa went to Atalanta, undisclosed. Kennedy went to Flamengo on a season-long loan. Caballero released. Tomori went to AC Milan, 26.2 million. Billy Gilmore on a loan move for Norwich was going to be brilliant for him. Absolutely going to be the making of him. I know with my own Liverpool when Harvey Elliott went down to Blackburn, look what it did to Harvey Elliott. Can you imagine Billy Gilmore next season when he goes back off that loan move? Fantastic. Victor Moses, of course, Spartak Moscow, 4.5 million. And Olivier Giroud, probably the bargain without a doubt of the transfer window, to AC Milan for 900,000. What a bargain he is. Olivier Giroud on your bench for £900,000. Absolutely brilliant. But sterling work from Chelsea, unbelievable. I know they wanted to land Koundé and they couldn't land them. You know, I think it was Sevilla, they came back and they tried to rinse Chelsea over a barrel because they had moved on Kurt Zuma and got extra money in there. They tried to up the fee by 20 million and Chelsea were having none of that nonsense at all. I'm sure Koundé is absolutely devastated that he didn't get the move. What a move to Chelsea would have been for that boy. I've given Chelsea a rating of 9 out of 10. I would have given them 10 out of 10 if they had landed Koundé, but 9 out of 10, absolutely brilliant and a force to reckon with this season. Without a shadow of a doubt, they have quality in every single area of the pitch and more or less quality in most of the backup positions as well. Outstanding from Chelsea as a club. Roman, hats off to you and Maria. Unbelievable. Let's move on to Everton. Andros Townsend in free from Crystal Palace. Begovic from Bournemouth on a free. But one of the real bargains of the transfer window really was the Murray Gray in from Leverkusen for 1.7 million. What a signing he's turned out to be. Already hit the ground running for a great season already, you know. He's going to be a big player for them this year. And Andy Lonergan, West Brom on a free. And right at the death, they brought in Solomon Rondon. Just a professional. They didn't disclose the fee on that. Players that went out: Moise Kean to Juventus on loan, Theo Walcott Southampton on a free, Joshua King went to Watford on a free, and Yannick Bolasie was released. So not a huge amount of business there. I'm not sure what business Everton were expecting. I know there was talk that if Mbappe had a move, that Richarlison would have went to PSG. He was going to be the backup apparently for Mbappe. Didn't come about, obviously. I think bringing in the Mary Gray, I think, was a brilliant bit of business for them, and I'm sure Rondon will work out really well last minute and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of gave everything 6 out of 10 because I wasn't kind of sure what they wanted with Benitez coming in and stuff like that. But certainly they've done a bit of business there with the Mary Gray that warrants at least the 6 out of 10. Let's move on to Leeds. Ins for Leeds. Dan James, Man United, 25 million. Took them 2 years, but they eventually got their man, albeit for 10 million more than what they wanted. But they did get in Jack Harrison, absolutely baller of a player from Man City, 11 million. They brought in Junior Firpo from Barcelona, 12.8 million. And then Amari Miller from Birmingham for $1 million. So Leeds have done some nice tidy business here in the transfer window. Jack Harrison getting tied down was absolutely instrumental for them. And Dan James coming in, albeit the price is pretty high, but I think he'll do really, really well for them and give them good options out there. Firpo is going to be absolutely exceptional, no doubt about it. And the mix that they have there already, they could do really, really well. On the outs, Alioski went out, released. Berardi released. Hernandez went to Castellion on free. Kirko Casilla, Eche, season-long loan, and Helder Costa to Valencia on a season-long loan. The Helder Costa one was an interesting one for me. He seemed to be a player, that I like that Leeds and stuff like that. But again, he's gone out on that season-long loan to Valencia. So with Leeds, I gave them a 7 out of 10. I thought they had a real good window. They didn't try to do an awful lot of business, and they didn't force it. They got Dan James in the end off Man United, which I think is a very good sign for them. Jack Harrison, again, as I mentioned, instrumental. So I gave them a 7 out of 10, which I think is a good rating for them. Let's move on to Leicester. In Patson Daka, one that was linked with Liverpool, of course. RB Salzburg, 27 million. So Mare from Lille, 17 million. Bertrand, free from Southampton. Vestergaard, Southampton, 15 million. They really went to town on Southampton, took in some of their key players. And Lockman from RB Leipzig on a season-long loan. Some really good signings there. Patson Daka, I think, is going to be an exceptional signing for what a baller that guy is. Really, really impressed also with Lockman. And Vestergaard is brilliant. He was one of the jewels of Southampton, and it's one of the reasons why I think Southampton this year are going to struggle, and they're going to have to be really careful because they've lost some key players between Danny Ings, Vestergaard, and Bertrand. They need to be really, really careful this year. In terms of outs, Wes Morgan, of course, retired. Hero up there, of course, at Leicester. Pratt went to Torino on a season-long loan, and Fuchs went to Charlotte FC on a free. Fuchs one was an interesting one as well because he was kind of a very experienced player there for Leicester, but went out. So I've given Leicester a 7 out of 10. I think they had a decent window. They've brought in some really, really good players. Rodgers, as usual, absolutely shrewd in the market, the way he does his business. Doesn't do an awful lot of talking, very similar to Liverpool. Doesn't do an awful lot of talking, just lands these players. So those players going in with a mix of what he has already there with Tielemans and Vardy and Iheanacho. I expect Leicester to have a real good season this year. So 7 out of 10, hats off to them. Next up, one that kills me, of course, is my own faithful, of course, Liverpool. Ibrahim Konate in 36 million from RB Leipzig. Came in practically on the first day of the transfer window. Seems like ages since then, Let's talk about the outs first. Wijnaldum went out to Paris Saint-Germain on a free. Shaqiri went to Lyon, 9.5 million. Sepp van den Berg, Preston on a season on loan. Grulich went to Porto for 10.5. Harry Wilson went to Fulham for 12 million. And Ben Davies to Sheffield United on a season-long loan. I'm not sure, I'm very disappointed in the transfer window that we had. I thought we would have brought in 1 or 2 players, certainly an attacking midfielder and certainly more cover for up front. But then you kind of balance that argument out and you say, well, do we want to bring in the Curtis Jones of this world through into the squad in a big way? Of course we do. Do we want Harvey Elliott to get his chance? Of course we do. So I don't know what those signings would have as an impact on that situation. But I thought we would have brought in another 1 or 2 players. On the flip side of that, the club has spent an absolute fortune renewing contracts. And I think what happened was there was a lot of publicity around Liverpool this transfer window in terms of articles and the media and stuff like that, linking us with every single player that was available with a heartbeat, from Neuhaus, to Patson Daka, to Saul Niguez, Basuma. We were linked with everyone and we got very excited about these things. And of course, the Mbappe stuff was in the background as well. But I just think a lot of that was a lot of clickbait and a lot of press stuff. I'm not sure if we went in for a lot of those players. I know we did make an inquiry for Bazuma, but it was quite late in the window to try and get that deal done. But it was very clear from about a month out that the goal for Liverpool was to renew the contracts and tie up the whole spine of the team, which they have done with the exception of Mo Salah. And I think the Mo Salah deal is just, it's not too far around the corner, to be honest. And at that stage, they'll have tied up most of the key players into long-term contracts, certainly into 2025, all the way up to 27, I think. So great work in terms of renewing the contracts, poor work in terms of the transfer window. I gave Liverpool a 2 out of 10. Just because the Canada deal was so far back in terms of the actual transfer window, I still thought we would have done a lot more business. And also, I think we were poor in terms of players we wanted to get out. Origi is still there. We've tried a number of times to move him out. I thought we would have at least got a loan move for him. Shaqiri obviously moved on to Leon, and good luck to him, and Rouge to Porto, so good luck to him as well. But 2 out of 10 is all I could get Liverpool in terms of transfer windows, in terms of the ability of Jurgen Klopp and Michael Edwards. I think it was a poor showing this window, to be honest. Let's move on to Man City. Of course, in Jack Grealish, 100 million, the absolute star, if you like, or the high end of the actual transfers in this window. Aston Villa, 100 million. Scott Carson came in from Derby on a free. When you look at the outs, Sergio Aguero, Barcelona on a free, Eric Garcia, Barcelona on a free, and Jack Harrison to Leeds for 11 million. There was so much expected of Man City in this transfer window in terms of nailing down, a proper striker, a goal scorer up there that's going to get them that other 20-25 goals, push them on even further. They spent so much time on that Kane deal, and then when it looked like it just wouldn't come off and the numbers were getting stupid, they ended up having to walk away, which made them look really bad because they didn't land the key position that they wanted. Although Grealish will improve them greatly. But I just think I gave them 5 out of 10 because I think they were going to sign Grealish anyway, and I think they wanted to sign a forward, and they didn't get that forward, so you could really only give them 50% of their goals. So 5 out of 10 for Man City. Jack Grealish already off to a decent start with them there, but I just think not landing that striker, I wonder will they be okay this season? Will they still find the goals? Now, they've been banging in the goals so far, and the goals have been coming from all around the team. But I wonder when it gets into the business end of the Champions League and the business end of the Premier League, could those goals dry up if they don't have a proper goal scorer in there? Let's move on to the other shining light in the transfer window. Man United, absolutely exceptional business. Kills me to say it, but like just, you can't deny this. Jadon Sancho getting Borussia Dortmund, 73 million. Rafael Varane, 34 million from Real Madrid. Tom Heaton, as we mentioned earlier, on a free from Aston Villa. And of course, the jewel in the crown, the prodigal son has returned. Cristiano Ronaldo from Juventus, 12.86 million. Cristiano Ronaldo, 12.86 million. Let that sink in. I don't care what people say about his wages or his bonuses or his add-ons or his image rights. I'm sure he's going to cost him a fortune. 12.86 million. Incredible business done by Man United. In terms of the outs, and that's where you put it into context here, Dan James Leeds, 25 million. Let that sink in. Cristiano Ronaldo, 12.86 million. Brandon Williams, Norwich on a season-long loan. Pereira went to Flamengo on a season-long loan. Sergio Romero was released. Joel Pereira released. Chong went to Birmingham on a season-long loan. Palestri went to Alves on a season-long loan. And Axel Tunsevy to Aston Villa on a season-long loan. United, after doing fabulous business, they have strengthened in the major key areas where they wanted to strengthen. Varane in there now with Harry Maguire is going to be absolutely amazing as a partnership, strengthening at the back. The only thing that they didn't get in was that defensive midfielder that they want, that central defensive midfielder that they wanted. And they're still trying to figure out, we've seen already in the early stages how Fred can expose them and stuff like that. Obviously, McTominay was out injured and stuff like that, who I think is a much better player than Fred anyway. But I just think not bringing in that midfielder, is that imbalance still there? They've loads of cover now at the back. They're sorting out the goalkeeping situation with De Gea and with Henderson. And up front, they have an abundance of riches there now. Once Rashford returns and stuff like that from his shoulder surgery and stuff like that. but they're well set up now for a proper charge of this title between themselves, Chelsea, City, and ourselves, Liverpool. It's going to be a heck of a season and a battle between those four teams, assuming they can all keep their players fit, especially Liverpool. But I think they've done outstanding business. I think Ronaldo going in there is unbelievable business, and especially when it looked like he was going to go with City, and then United stepped in there and said, "Not a chance. He is our boy, and the sun is coming home." So let's see how that fares out with United, but absolutely exceptional. I gave them 8 out of 10. I probably could have given them 9 out of 10. If they had got in that central defensive midfielder, I would have given them 10 out of 10. Very similar to Chelsea with the Kunde situation. But these were both the shining lights of this transfer window without a shadow of a doubt. Strength and depth all over the place. And it's going to be a heck of a season as we move into it. Spurs is an interesting one. Brian Gill came in from Sevilla, 26 million. It was a part exchange, of course, as we know. Golini came in from Atalanta, season-long loan. Romero came in from Atalanta, 42.5 million. Sarr came in from Mets, undisclosed, and Emerson Royal came in from Barcelona, 25.8 million. On the outside of things, Musa Sissoko went to Watford, 3 million. Gazzaniga went to Fulham on a free. Danny Rose, Watford on a free. Foyt went to Villarreal, 13.5 million. Lamela was part of that exchange and that Brian Gill deal. Toby Alderweireld went to Dubois, 4.2. Joe Hart to Celtic for 1 million. And Troy Parrott and MK Dons on a loan. So Spurs ended up with all the fury of the Harry Kane situation. They got through all that. They held on to Harry Kane. They have him now at least for another season. Son has hit the ground running as he always does, an absolute baller in there. Brian Gill, we haven't seen much of yet, but we will. Christian Romero is a fabulous signing for going to be an outstanding player for Spurs. But the biggest signing really for Spurs has been Nuno. Although he was maybe third, fourth, or fifth choice, I'm not too sure. But I think they got the right man. He has them playing brilliant football. I know they struggled a little bit against Watford to get over the line with the 1-0, but they look very, very solid now, and they look like they're playing with a proper pattern of play and not as chaotic. And Nuno brings that to them. He has a demand there for players that it's 100% week in, week out. I think Spurs are going to have a real good season this season if they keep their players fit. And I think with Nuno there, it's a great opportunity for him now at a big club to put his proper stamp on the Premier League. When you think of all the good stuff he did with Wolves and the players he brought in, and look, he isn't finished yet. He still has to get a lot more money to put his actual stamp on this team. I'm sure there's a number of other players he'll want to bring in. But good luck to Spurs this season. They started out great, top of the league, especially with them being top of the league and Arsenal bottom of the league. What more can we say about that? When did we ever think that would happen? But hats off to Spurs. Nice little bit of business there. Give them a 6 out of 10. The only reason I gave them 6 out of 10 is I thought it took them an awful long time to sort out the manager situation. But it would have been preferable, obviously, for Nuno to have more time to work with the players. But the preparation has been good in terms of the start of the season. But I just feel maybe 1 or 2 players more could have went out and 1 or 2 players more could have come in. But no doubt that will happen. They might do some business in January. Nuno's good that way. But 6 out of 10 for Spurs. Finally, West Ham in. Craig Dawson, Watford, 2 million. Areola, Paris Saint-Germain on loan. Vlasic from Moscow, 26.8 million. Kurt Zouma, great bit of business off Chelsea, 29.8 million. Absolutely brilliant bit of business, Kurt Zouma. And Kral from Slavia Prague on a season-long loan. Out, Fabian Balbuena, Dynamo Moscow on a free, and Felipe Anderson, Lazio, 2.7 million. This is West Ham again after doing fabulous business with Moyes there. They're after bringing in Kurt Zouma. They're after bringing in Vlasic. They brought in some really key players now. Mikel Antonio, of course, is on fire. They just have such an abundance of riches there now in terms of West Ham. And the way they play football, Moyes has them so organised. They've had a great start to the season. I gave them a 7 out of 10. I think they've brought in kind of exactly what they needed. I thought the Zouma deal with Chelsea, I thought was a brilliant bit of business. I think they picked up a player like that for 29.8 million. When you see the madness in this transfer window for what some people are paying, when you think Kurt Zouma going in there for 29.8 million and Ben White costing Arsenal 50 million, you know what I mean? You have to ask yourself questions. But absolutely brilliant from West Ham, 7 out of 10. Moyes doing an absolute stellar job down there. Expect them to have a real big season. This has been your transfer window review show and ratings, of course. If you have any thoughts or ideas or you want to drop your rating in for your club, drop them down below in the comments. Of course, if you're watching the videos, drop a like on there and make sure you support us. If you want to contact the show, we're on Twitter at the underscore upper underscore tier. If you want to contact us on Facebook, you can see it there, it's the upper tier. As always, we're on YouTube, the Dynamo Podcast Network. And if you want to listen to audio versions of the show, you will catch us on Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, wherever you pick up audio versions of the show. We will talk to you again real soon. Try to enjoy your weekend. I know it's international football, but heck, it's only around the corner for the Premier League to return. And we will chat to you again real soon.